Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Patarne Nirvasesa Sunyavadi Paskatyade Satarne Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Stam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sadvadutam Parijana Sahita Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha Vanchakapati Vishaki Pasanviya Vitapati Tanam Pavanevyo Vaishnabebu Namo Namaha. So I'd like to share my screen. Sakundalam Charu Krita Bhushanam Babau Prativyam Patitam Samujvalam Haheti Sadviti Rishaya Sureshvara Malyar Mukundam Vikiranta Idire. Falling on the ground, Bhaumasura's head shone brilliantly, decorated as it was with earrings and an attractive helmet. As cries of alas, alas, and well done arose, the sages and principal demigods worshiped Lord Mukunda by showering him with flower garlands. So this is the Lord has killed Bhaumasura, also known as Narakasura, and he's decapitated him. And so depending on which side you're on, you're either saying alas, alas, or well done, right? There's always people cheering for both sides. So when the Lord kills someone who's demoniac, so his friends congratulate him, and his enemies and the friends of the demon are mourning. So there's no BBT purport here, although there are commentaries by our acharyas. I'm going to go on to text 23. Tatascha bhu Krishnam Upecha Kundale Pratapta Jambunada Ratnabasvare Sa Vaijayantya Vana Malayarpayat Pratetasam Chatram Ato Mahamanim. Now, this is kind of interesting because these are the items that Bhaumasura's mother, Bhumi Devi, is giving to Krishna now that he's victorious. And we see in the Sanskrit, it says Mahamanim. So mani means a jewel. It can often literally mean a pearl. And Maha means great. When we talk about the Mahaprasadam, it means the prasadam that was on the altar. And Srila Prabhupada simply in his Krishna book translates this as a great jewel. But here in the BBT translation, it says the peak of Mandara mountain, which is based on the commentaries of our acharyas who mentioned that this was a mountain, that the demon had also stolen the peak of a mountain. So translation, the goddess of the earth then approached Lord Krishna and presented him with the deity's earrings, which were made of glowing gold inlaid with shining jewels. She also gave him a Vaijayanti flower garland, Varuna's umbrella, and the peak of Mandara mountain. So these are all items that Bhaumasura, her son, had stolen from the demigods. And it was actually at the request of Indra, whose mother is Aditi. He said, would you please, he went to Krishna and he said, would you please get these back? They've been stolen. Just like one would go to the police and say, would you please get back my stolen article? So a number of things that are very important here is that if we think about, earrings, a garland, it's a special garland, obviously, an umbrella. So earrings and an umbrella, and the peak of a mountain. So one generally wouldn't go through a war for the sake of earrings and an umbrella. I mean, even if it was a very valuable earrings and umbrella, even if the umbrella and earrings were, say, worth a lot of money, so one wouldn't engage in a war and decapitate people, etc., over something like that. So we might wonder about this, but the demigod's paraphernalia is not ordinary. So let's look at a modern example. So I'm sure most of us are in possession of a rectangle like this, right? And we carry around this little rectangle this little phone, and this phone has been produced by human beings, but it enables us to do things that we couldn't do ourselves. Correct? Just like, I mean, right now I'm speaking to you all on a larger rectangle of my computer, but with this phone, if I have this phone, I can communicate with people all over the world. I can't personally, I don't have things set up this way, but I've been in places, my youngest son's home is like this, where through these devices, you can control the lights and different paraphernalia in the house. So you can control different things. Maybe you can, with my phone, actually, I can control the car. I can turn on the temperature in the car. I can open and close the trunk. I can direct the car and so many things. So the demigods also have this kind of paraphernalia. They have the sort of paraphernalia where it allows them to enlarge their powers, so to speak. It's interesting, we create these phones. These phones are created by humans, but then the phones themselves enlarges the power of humans beyond what they can do themselves, like any other tool. So these earrings and umbrella are mystic tools. They have certain powers and potencies, and therefore the demigods were eager to get them back. And also, therefore, you don't want them falling in the wrong hands. So there's quite an understanding of this in the Shastra, that knowledge and powers should be given out carefully. The idea is that a person has to be qualified. And we have some interesting stories in the Shastra of people who were not qualified and tried to, cheat their way in. We have Ekalavya, who wanted to become a disciple of Dronacharya, but Dronacharya could understand that he was not qualified. So Dronacharya refused to take him on as a student and to teach him all these military arts and to give him access to these subtle weapons. So Ekalavya cheated. He made a deity of Dronacharya, and he was able actually to get Dronacharya's potency to learn these things without Dronacharya's overt knowledge, which is a whole interesting discussion about guru and pictures of guru and etc. However, once Dronacharya found out about it, he actually withdrew Ekalavya's ability to use the knowledge he had gained. A similar thing happened with Karna, where Karna had approached Parasuram under false pretenses in order to gain military arts. And when Parasuram found out that Karna was not a qualified person, he said, you won't be able to access this knowledge when you need it the most. It won't, you have it, but it won't be able to help you. And so this is the idea of that knowledge was passed down to a large extent through oral tradition. I mean, such is true even today. Prabhupada will often say you can't become a doctor just by reading a textbook. You have to go to a doctor. You have to be trained by other doctors. But Shastra is also like that. It wasn't just something gleaned from the Shastra. And it was funny, he was asking me, do we have a Sadhu and Guru Advisory Council to the GBC? I don't know why we just call it Shastric Advisory Council. But the idea is that just by studying the Shastra, it's not sufficient. Which is interesting because Shastra is the primary authority, but still it's not sufficient. One needs Guru in order to explain how to apply the Shastra. One needs sadhus in order to have an example of how the Shastra is applied. But also, one needs Guru in order to decide whether or not you're qualified. The Guru will say, well, you're not qualified for this. You have to get more training. You have to get more. You have to have this, you have to have that. That's one of the important things of the Guru. All right. It's also important that she gave these back, but we'll get to that in a moment. Okay, going to text now 24. Astot shid at vishvesham Devi deva vararchitam pranjali pranatarajam bhakti pravanaya dhiya. O king, after bowing down to him and then standing with joined palms, the goddess, her mind filled with devotion, began to praise the Lord of the universe, whom the best of demigods worship. So she brought back the stolen items, those items her son had stolen, and now she's going to offer prayers. Text 25. Bhumir uvacha namaste deva devesha shankachakra gadadhara bhakte cho pattarupaya paramatma namostute. Goddess Bhumi said, obeisances unto you, O Lord of the chief demigods, O holder of the conch shell, disc and club, O supreme soul within the heart. You assume your various forms to fulfill your devotees' desires, obeisances unto you. So Acharya's comment here that Goddess Bhumi is praising the Lord's four-arm form, holding conch shell, disc, and club and lotus, but in front of her, she's seeing the two-arm form. And therefore, she says, you assume your various forms to fulfill your devotees' desires. Now, this point is also very significant. Lord Brahma states that the Lord takes whatever form the devotees want to worship him in. We have kind of a, how would you say, parody of this in our human world, right? Where someone will marry someone and then they try to turn their spouse into what they want. They try to mold their spouse to be what they want, or we try to mold our children to be what we want. And it doesn't usually work very well. But Krishna actually takes whatever form the devotee desires. He has infinite forms, infinite qualities, and he responds to what the devotee is attracted to. And if someone's particularly attracted to Krishna's aspect of forgiveness, then Krishna particularly manifests that aspect to the devotee. Now, this text 26, the last one we're going to go through today, if you see the Devanagari here, and maybe we'll see if we can enlarge it a little bit. Okay, so if you see the Devanagari here, you're seeing some repetition, right? You can see just in the Devanagari letters that we have the same letters going on. We have Namaha, Pankajana, or Namaha, Pankajama, Namaha, Pankajane. We have Namaste then, Pankaja again. So looking at the Sanskrit, this is a very famous prayer. Nama Pankaja Nabaye, Nama Pankaja Maline, Nama Pankaja Netraya, Namaste Pankanat Pankajangraye. So we're looking at these Pankaja. Panka means mud, and Ja means birth. So mudborn. Mudborn is a term that's used to describe the lotus flower. Sometimes it's called Ambuja, born of the water. Ambu means water, or born of the mud. The fact that the lotus is born of the mud, of course, has deep metaphorical significance. This most beautiful flower that comes from mud, and that it's born from water, that it's in the water, but its leaves have a waxy coating. And therefore the water just flows off the leaf and flowers of the lotus. So if we look at the synonyms here, Naba is a navel, and Maline, Mala is a garland, Netra is eyes, and then Angraye, Anga is limbs, and here particularly is referring to the feet. So Krishna has a lotus line on one of his feet, and his feet are soft as a lotus. So we're going to look at this verse again. It's a very easy verse to memorize, and something that we could say in our own prayers. So you can stay muted, but why don't you say this with me? Well, I'll say it together, but please stay muted. Namaha Pankaja Nabhaya, Namaha Pankaja Maline, Namaha Pankaja Netraya, Namaste Pankajangraye. So again, Nama is respects, obeisances, Pankaja, mudborn or lotus. Nabaya is a navel, Maline like a mala, like a garland. Netra is eyes, and Angra means limbs. Here is particularly referring to the lotus feet. Translation: my respectful obeisances are unto you, O Lord, whose abdomen is marked with a depression like a lotus flower, who are always decorated with garlands of lotus flowers, whose glance is as cool as a lotus, and whose feet are engraved with lotuses. BBT. Purport, Queen Kunti offered the same prayer, which is found in the first canto of the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, chapter 8, text 22. The synonyms and translation given here are taken from Srila Prabhupada's rendering of that text. We may also note that although Kunti's prayer occurs early in the Bhagavatam, she offered it many years after the incident described here. Of course, if we look at the literal translation, it would mean, my respects to your lotus navel, my respects to your lotus garland, my respects to your lotus eye. I offer respects to your lotus feet. Okay. So here, Mother Bhumi is actually the wife of the Lord. And here we're seeing the love of the Lord's wife for him, how much the Lord's wife loves him. And in this world, we always appreciate the love between a husband and wife. We celebrate wedding anniversaries. We're very happy when we see married couples who are loving with each other. And how much this is there, unlimited times between the Lord and his consort. Yes. So, of course, Mother Bhumi, Bhum means the earth. Bhumi is the earth. And even in modern societies, we will say Mother Earth or Mother Nature. God is the father and mother is the earth, or nature is the mother. And then all of us living beings are the children. Maya dakshena prakriti suyute sacharacha hetunanena kantaya jagad viparivartate. So Krishna says this several times in the Bhagavad Gita, especially is discussed in chapter 13, about how material nature is the mother and he is the father, and we, the living entities, are his children. Srila Prabhupada will sometimes say, if there's mother and children, there has to be a father. So if we're going to talk about Mother Earth and Mother Nature and the living entities, this implies that there must also be a father. But of course, in this world, the children that are produced, the living entities that are produced, some of them are pious and some of them are evil. Some are good people, some are bad people. Most are mixed. Even evil people usually have something good about them, and even good people usually have something evil about them. In this case, we're looking at this Bhaumasura. He's called Bhumi, expands. In Sanskrit, each vowel has a simple and an expanded form. There's a, e, u, ow, o, ow, like that. So we have u, or ow. So here we have Bhumi, becomes ow, Bhaumasura. Bhaumasura means the son of Bhumi. Just like Arjuna is called Kaunteya, which means he's the son of Kunti. So it's a way in Sanskrit by changing from the short vowel to the long vowel, or we could say the expanded vowel, to show that someone is a descendant. So this Bhaumasura, also called Narakasura, he was evil, although he was the direct son of the Lord and his wife. I mean, we're all the Lord's children in our bodily form indirectly. We're not directly produced by the Lord in bodily form. You could say we're directly the Lord's children spiritually. Of course, we don't have a beginning. That's like the sun and the sunshine existing simultaneously. It's not like first there's a sun and then there's sunshine. So it's not like first there's Krishna and then there's a living entity separate. We all exist eternally. But here we're talking about Bhaumasura was directly the child of the Lord. And this is explained in some of the Puranas, that when the Lord comes in his form as Varaha, and he picks up the earth with his tusks, in doing that, he impregnates her with this Bhoma. And Bhumi is one of the Lord's two chief consorts. So you'll see in many of the South Indian temples of the Sri Sampradaya, you will see Lord Vishnu, and on one side is Sri, and on the other side is Bhu, Sri and Bhu. In Sanatana Goswami explains that when Gopakumar goes to Vaikuntha, he also sees the Lord with his two consorts of Sri and Bhu, or Lakshmi and Dada. Dada is another name for Bhumi. Dada means one who holds. So the earth is holding us up, and therefore she is called Dada. And Gopakumar, when he was seeing Lord Vishnu with Shri and Dada, he would sometimes see them in the form of Krishna with Radharani and Chandravali. So anyway, the Bhumi is one of the two chief consorts of the Lord, and she's particularly associated with him in his form as Varaha. So they had this child together, Bhoma, but somehow he didn't turn out right. I mean, sometimes parents think that, if their children go astray, it's their fault and they feel guilty and responsible. But even the Lord has children that go astray. And there is not much information I could find about why Bhaumasura went astray. It seems that in some of the more minor Puranas, not in the main 18 Puranas, it says that he had some association with Bhaumasura. Bhaumasura's story is also in the Bhagavatam, how he fights with the Lord. He's a devotee of Lord Shiva, and how his daughter marries Krishna's grandson. But anyway, he was also demoniac. He was also an evil person against the supremacy of the Lord, and somehow by his association. So even if you're a direct child of the Lord, even if you're, you can still become contaminated. Anyway, so Bhumi accepts that her son has been killed by the Lord. She understands that her son was demoniac. She sees that, one of the demoniac things that he did was he kidnapped 16,100 women. So, he wasn't respectful to women. He was abusive to women. He was exploiting women, and a lot of women. That's a lot of women to exploit. So she recognizes this. He's an exploiter. He's an abuser. And because of this, she rejects him, even though he's her son and the son of the Lord. Krishna says, Api chet sutaracharo, if you're my devotee, even if you do something wrong, you're still considered a sadhu. I was hearing Prabhupada talk about this verse this morning, and he was saying, devotees don't do anything wrong. Their devotees are not debauchees, he was saying, but someone may have some bad habit from before they were a devotee, or they may not be up to the standard in everything. They may not follow he was saying they may not follow all of the standards of ritual cleanliness, but they're still devotees. However, when the Lord sees his devotee doing something abominable and abusive and cruel and criminal, he may punish him also. Yes. So she accepts this. Srila Rupa Goswami says that the Lord will accept an enemy who surrenders, and he'll punish a servant or a son who does something wrong. It's not nepotism. Nepotism is, well, if you're my family member, you're my friend, then you won't have to suffer for your crime. And if somebody takes this mentality, well, I'm a devotee and therefore I can do anything and I won't have to suffer for it, that's a great offense. That's sinning on the strength of chanting. And Krishna's not like that. He even cares about appearances. Just like when he's Ram, he said, Sita, you've got to go. People are criticizing you. They're not going to be able to respect my authority. I'm not going to be able to rule properly, even though she was innocent. So Bhumi Devi accepts this. She accepts that her demoniac son had to be chastised by the Lord, and he didn't rectify his wrongs. If we do something wrong, we should rectify, and he never did that. So she rectified on his behalf. She took these items that he had stolen and she gave them to the Lord. So this kind of rectification is very important whenever we've done something wrong. It's part of a proper apology. The Krishna says, Atmaham tapaso, I am penance. Tapaso hridayam sakshat. Penance is my very heart. He says this in the 9th chapter of the 2nd canto to Lord Brahma. Penance means I've done something wrong and I need to put things back in order. I need to balance them. If I just say, oh, I'm sorry, but I don't understand what I've done wrong, I don't admit what I've done wrong, and I don't do anything to try to put things back into balance, that's not actually an apology. It's not actual penance. penance, there should be some, I mean, we have this word tapa, which means fire. There should be some fixing. There should be some sting. So I've stolen something. I don't just say I'm sorry. I give it back. If I can't give it back, I do some sort of rectification. Otherwise, there's no loving relationship. Those of us in this material world, when we want to come to Krishna, we need to do some penance. We need to do some rectification of our rebellion. And then she demonstrates that she still loves the Lord. All right, you've killed our son, but I still love you. I haven't stopped loving you. So these beautiful prayers that she offers. Oh, my Lord, you have a lotus navel, lotus eyes, lotus feet. The lotus it's beautiful, it's fragrant, it's very soft. She's saying, she's praising his beauty, and she's also praising his gentleness. I mean, it's a funny thing to praise after someone just exhibits prowess, after someone exhibits military. We think of military as being devoid of gentleness, as being devoid of tenderness. Actually, the Kshatriyas are by nature, Prabhupada talks about this with Arjuna, they're by nature very gentle. And they are always trying to avoid crisis. They're always trying to bring peace in the world. But they can give up their gentleness externally and engage in killing and maiming on the battlefield if necessary, and engaging in capturing the enemy and putting him in jail. But that doesn't mean that they're not essentially gentle. And so we can learn a number of things from this, of course. So one of the things that we can learn is that we accept the verdict of the Lord. We don't argue. She accepts. Yes, this is the Lord's verdict. It's rightly done. What the Lord does is rightly done. That when we do something wrong, that we rectify. We fix it as much as we can, to whatever extent we can. At the very least, we offer that we will do our level best not to repeat the offending behavior, and that we continue to honor the Lord, that we continue to love the Lord, even if his way of dealing with us is not pleasant from an external point of view. A similar situation is given with Subhadra, the Lord's sister. Subhadra married Krishna's friend Arjuna, and together they had a son, Abhimanyu. Actually, Krishna personally trained Abhimanyu in warfare. And during the great battle in the Bhagavad Gita, the battle of Kurukshetra, Abhimanyu was only 16. He was married, and his wife was expecting a child. In those days, people married as teenagers. Actually, until probably 150 years ago, people generally were married by the time, both men and women were married by the time they were 30. 20. Today it's like 30, 35, but they were usually married by the time they were 20. So Abhimanyu was married at 16, and his wife was expecting a child. And he went on the battlefield, and through deceit and breaking of the rules of warfare, he was killed. And it was actually his son that became the continuer of the dynasty. Everyone else all the other young people were killed in the battle. So his son ended up being a very important person. But he was the only child of Arjuna and Subhadra. I mean, not that long after Arjuna married Subhadra, the Pandavas were exiled for 13 years. And Subhadra and Abhimanyu stayed in Dwarka. She stayed with her parents and her brother Krishna. So they had only had that one child. And now this child was killed. And he was killed on the battlefield, as Srila Rupa Goswami says, practically in Krishna's presence. I mean, Krishna and Arjuna were in another part of the battlefield. And Subhadra could have said, well, Krishna, you could have prevented the death of Abhimanyu. And of course, Krishna is all powerful. He could have prevented the death of Abhimanyu. But still, Subhadra didn't waver in her devotion. It said that her devotion for him never changed its color. So this is also a very important lesson. In Lord Brahma's prayers in Bhagavatam 10:14, he has this very famous verse, Tate nukampam sukshamikshamano, where he says that when bad things happen to us, we think, oh, this is actually less than what I deserve by my actions, by my karma in this world. The Lord is kind on me and he's reducing what I should suffer. And one offers with one's heart, with one's words, with one's body. Here we see Bhumi is offering with her body. We offer more obeisance to the Lord. Thank you, my dear Lord. Thank you, my dear Lord. So it's very easy to see that things are the Lord's grace when they suit our plans. But even when they don't suit our plans, even when they appear devastating, even when our son dies, still we see that this is the Lord's mercy. Now, by the way, we can recite these prayers just like Kunti said the same prayer that Bhumi said. Bhumi's saying the prayer now, and Kunti's saying the same prayer later. Kunti's Krishna's aunt. We can also recite these prayers. It's one of the 9 items of devotional service is prayers. And one of the categories of praying is to recite notable prayers. So we can recite these prayers ourselves, and we can imbibe something here of the very loving mood of Bhumi Devi, the consort of the Lord. So we have about 12 minutes left, and we have a number of questions in the chat. Oh, happy birthday, Christina. Okay. So we have here a question, a servant, a slave, teacher, Acharya is the post-graduation degree, and Shastri is the graduation degree. Shri Krishna went to the capital of Bhaumasura, Guwahati, yes, Brahmaputra, it's in Assam. Yes, I mean, at least that's as far as we know. So what the modern historians are saying is, yes, that this place in Assam is this capital to where Krishna went. Okay, we have another question. Neti means not this, not this. What does this mean? Well, I'll tell you that Srila Prabhupada really liked it when there were questions after the class for the questions to apply to that class and not to something else. He said, if you ask questions about other topics, then it can go on forever. So I'm not quite sure how this is related to this class. That's Neti has to do with Jnana Yoga. I mean, it's a nice question and I think to discuss, but let's look at something related to these verses first, and then we can get back to that if we have time. Okay, can you expand on Lord forgiving the sinner's enemy, but being extra strict on his devotees and chastising them? Well, okay, he forgives his enemies, but he also generally chastises them. So, he kills Hiranyakashipu. He liberates him by killing him. That sounds pretty extreme. And extra strict on his devotees? I don't know about that. The Lord's very actually kind and soft on his devotees, but at the same time, he wants them to come to a proper standard. If someone comes to you, like I used to be a teacher of children, if someone comes to you with an essay they wrote and you just say, oh, yes, very good, very good, very good. They'll never learn how to improve. You have to go through it and you say, well, this part is good and this part needs improvement and it needs improvement in this way and this part. Otherwise, you're not going to learn. I mean, imagine if you want to learn some sport, if you want to learn golf or tennis or something, you're paying somebody to train you. They have to be able to say to you, you're holding the club wrong, you're holding the racket. You have to put your hands like this, you have to do it like this. And they have to be able to say to you, I don't think you're ready for the tournament. Take another 2 weeks to practice and then you can go to the tournament. You're not ready yet. And if you're not willing to do that, don't go to a teacher. Like people will ask me sometimes to look at their writing and comment, and I'm always hesitant to do that. I say, I may take your essay and tear it to shreds. I was very, very gratified. So my godbrother Jai Deutsche Swami asked me recently to review one of his books, and he trained me in editing. And I said, you know that if I'm going to go through your book and I'm going to comment on it, that I'm going to show no mercy and take no prisoners. Is that okay with you? And he said, yes, do it. And I've been very gratified that he's taken my often heavy, I mean, I made sure that I said nice things too. I made sure that as I went through the manuscript that I noticed, well, this was done very well, and this is a good point, that it wasn't just negative. But I've been very gratified that certain things he discussed with me at length. I mean, there were certain points I made that we had a long back and forth about it. And just recently he wrote me and he said, okay, you made this comment. And this was, I don't know, a few months ago that I wrote my comment. So that means he's going through every one of them carefully. And he just wrote me a couple days ago and he said, you made this comment. Can you give me some scriptural citations for this so that I can include that in my book? And I was like, wow, you know. So this is the kind of person, next time he asks me, this is not the first time he's asked me, but next time he asks me to give him feedback, I'll be very enthusiastic to give feedback. I'll think, wow, this is somebody that when I give feedback, they're not going to be offended and they're going to take it as something helpful and they're going to take it on board. So Krishna deals like that with his devotees. And Jeffrey Eckler, yes, you have your hand up.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for this class. My question is more about the structure of the Sanskrit and how we're talking about the navel and then the garland and then the head and then the feet. But when we take darshan, we start at the feet and then move up. So is there some sort of order? Like it seems to be cyclical up to like from the feet to the head to the feet to the head, right? But like, is there some sort of literary device or something going on in the Sanskrit that I'm not smart enough to see, where it goes from the navel to the garland to the head to the feet?
Okay, well, let's take a look at Srila Prabhupada's purport when Kunti Devi says this verse. And here he says, one should begin to see the Lord from his lotus feet gradually rising to the thighs, waist, chest, and face. One should not try to look at the face of the Lord without being accustomed to seeing the lotus feet of the Lord. Srimati Kunti, because of her being the aunt of the Lord, in other words, his superior, did not begin to see the Lord from the lotus feet because the Lord might feel ashamed. So here we're talking about a certain kind of etiquette. And thus Kunti Devi, just to save a painful situation for the Lord, began to see the Lord just above his lotus feet, that is from the waist, gradually rising to the face and then down to the lotus feet. In the round, everything there is in order. Now you might say, okay, but how is this applicable to the Lord's wife? And I'm going to look here. I kind of have the wrong glasses on for seeing my phone. Okay. Remember which commentary it was in. Okay, it wasn't. Okay, so this is by Srila Sanatana Goswami. I can read his whole commentary. It's very nice. And Srila Jiva Goswami's is almost exactly the same. He says, this verse elaborates on the phrase Deva Devesha of the last verse and praises Krishna. Sridhar Swami in his commentary makes lotus feet in the dual form since Krishna has 2 feet, even though only one of his feet is marked with a lotus. Using the word lotus can also be interpreted as an expression of the Lord's beauty. His navel is compared to a lotus because his navel is deep like a lake from which the lotus of Brahma sprouts, or because Krishna has a navel shaped like a lotus. The first 3 elements, navel, garland, and eyes, are described in order of increasing beauty and consequently excellence. The feet are placed last to indicate beauty as an expression of devotion. So this is the commentary of Srila Sridhar Swami, which is quoted by Srila Jiva Goswami and by Srila Sanatana Goswami. So that the navel is beautiful like a lotus, even more beautiful is the garland of lotuses, even more beautiful are Krishna's eyes. There's another verse that talks about increasing degrees of beauty of Krishna and ends with his face, that the most beautiful is his face, and among his face are his eyes and his lips, like that. And here, feet is showing devotion. So to fall at someone's feet, to notice the beauty of their feet indicates devotion, that she's devoted to his feet. So that's the commentary of our acharyas on what you pointed out. And thank you so much. What a wonderful thing to
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Urmila, Devi, Dasi, I'd like to follow up on Prashant's question about how Lord treats his devotees. There's a
Okay.
verse in the Shastra where it says that if Krishna favors someone, he takes things away from them. And then that wretched fellow becomes abandoned by their family, and then there's nothing else left to do than surrender to Krishna. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, well, it says if the Lord favors you, he gives you stuff. If he favors you more because you're attached to that more than him, he takes it away. But his ultimate favor is giving you things that you can use in his service. So we find that, you know, like the Lord gives Sudama Brahmana a lot of things that he uses in service, and Dhruva Maharaj, and so much the florist in Mathura. So the Lord favoring by taking away is when he sees that we're misusing things. That when he sees that the things that he's given us to use in his service, instead, we're using them in ways that are taking us away from him. And then he may take those things away from us. And I think that any parent does this kind of thing. You know, you give like I have two great grandsons here. They're 4 years old and 6 years old. And their parents give them toys. I give them toys, and their friends give them toys. All of us who love them, we give them toys. That's part of the thing that we do. But if they're misusing the toys, if they're hitting each other over the head with the toys, then we take the toys away. And that shows as much or more love as giving them the toys. I'm just remembering the oldest one. I can't remember. I think it was his fourth or fifth birthday. I can't remember. So we had, it was a friend's birthday. It was right after his birthday. It was a week after his birthday. So I had given him 4 presents for his birthday. And a week later, we went to like a museum play area for little kids for one of his friends' birthdays. And he asked if we could buy him something from the gift shop there. And I looked at him and I said, you know, it was just your birthday a week ago, and I just gave you 4 things, and you haven't even used all of them yet. You haven't even opened all of them yet. So, you know, maybe you can actually use those things I've already given you before you ask for something else. And I was thinking, what I was thinking was, oh, I could get it. I could get him something else. It's not very expensive. It's a small thing. You know, I wouldn't mind getting him something else. I wasn't giving him a no. I was giving him a, well, think about it. And then he had a full-on tantrum. Full on. Lying on the floor, kicking his arms and legs, screaming, etc. At that point, there was no way I was going to get him something else. That was done. That was over. So Krishna's like that. Krishna wants to give us things. He wants to facilitate us. But if our attitude about them is off, or if we misuse them, you know, if we get prideful about them, if we feel entitled to them, I've noticed, at least in my life, that Krishna does not give me things that I scream and cry about. He's very likely to give me small, insignificant things. You know, I have a passing thought. Oh, it might be nice to have some cashews. And 5 minutes later, someone hands me a bag of cashews. That kind of thing has happened to me. I'm sure it's happened to all of you. But anything that I'm ranting about and anything I feel entitled about and anything that Krishna doesn't tend to give. So I see another question, but it is 8:01. So do we need to stop?
I don't know. Adipusha Prabhu, how is the darshan? Any signs of darshan anytime soon?
It looks like they need a few minutes.
Okay, Tina has her hand up, and it's Tina's birthday. Tina, happy birthday. Unmute yourself, turn on your camera, glorify Krishna, please. Tina and Narayani. I'm not sure who's gonna speak.
Hare Krishna, it's me. I'm sorry. Can you hear me? Because my mother is calling me. And
Yeah,
you can hear me? Okay.
You hear you just fine.
Okay, because the call is like coming through. I'm confused. All right. All right, Krishna, thank you so much for the class. I took a lot of points, but one thing I wanted to ask you was, so you were talking about how, even Krishna had children that were of demonic nature, right? And so for me, I was thinking about myself and my nature versus my primary family's nature and my daughter's nature, and how I try to cover her and protect her as much as I can, right? And in New York City, in Lower East Side, with the drug epidemic and everything, I cover her as much as I can, right? But like I'm very concerned that like her my sister's nature rubs off on their children, and my daughter is vibing with their children, and some natures of children in her class are different, and so I'm always so concerned about her nature changing because of the association outside of me, and I'm just wondering if you have any insight on that, because I know like Prahlad Maharaj converted all of the demonic children to be devotees of the Lord, right? So couldn't the opposite happen as well?
Absolutely, that it can go either way.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So like, what is some practical things maybe I can keep in my heart or
I have a
bestow
video
on my daughter?
channel, 4 Keys to Raising Children. And I would,
Dear devotees, let's close for
I would
Darshan.
just suggest that. It's not a long video. Thank you very, very much. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.